Welcome to A Dose of Feel Good. I'm your host, Whitney Bischoff, and today we are talking about if you're tired of being strong, small dose, strength scene. You can see full show notes at doseoffeelgood.my.canva.site. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back, everyone. We are at episode 49 this week, and our topic is if you're tired of being strong, small dose, strength scene. And I'm super excited to dig into this one this week, and I won't lie, I am taking this in a little bit different direction than I originally had thought, but I think it's really going to hit home. And you might be thinking, Whitney, how does that fit into what it means to be strong? Because I'm exhausted and that might just feel a little off. Like, how do these two things relate? But I promise I will get there. But what we're talking about, so if you're feeling just really exhausted about being strong, showing up strong, I want to take us in a little adventure, if you will. I think sometimes we have this perception of expectation. Oftentimes we put these expectations on ourselves, but we have this perception that everyone is watching what we're doing or how we're showing up or things like that. And that there's almost this certain persona or ideal of how we need to show up in certain spaces, whether that's for friends, for family. I think sometimes social media also amplifies that even more, that we have to show up in a certain way to meet this expectation of how the world sees us. I think that's oftentimes what makes us feel so exhausted of feeling like we have to be strong all the time. At least for me, I think that's where a lot of it comes from, that I've been through a lot of things and I feel like I handle them well, or at least I put on this outside persona like I've handled them very well. I'm great in a crisis. I just go from thing to thing to thing. And so I think this outward appearance or expectation is that, oh, she's so strong, she has it all together. And I think then because of that almost expectation or perceived expectation, it's this piece that if I don't measure up to that, or if I don't show up as strong, that I'm not then modeling what is possible for other people. And so it's almost this like weird dynamic when we talk about like being vulnerable and like showing that like it's okay. But also, like, I want to show people the power of, like, you can actually do hard things, right? And so being able to show that in practice can be a lot of pressure. And I think that's a lot where that exhaustion comes from, because, I mean, I'm sure you all have heard, like, that strength is admired. And at the end of the day, like, we want to be admired for those things. And when you hear that admiration, it's really hard to kind of pull back from that. And so I think I like really want to do better about celebrating, how far I've come from different places, and also like the beauty of where I'm at now, which is light years of growth and healing. And just a different version of what being strong looks like. And I think that strength now for me is almost this like badge of honor or proof of everything that I've been able to get through, and almost like this piece of like what resilience actually looks like in practice. But I think rather than almost looking at it as I have to be strong in every space, right? Because that can be exhausting, and it is. And it's this false expectation that everyone expects us to be in that space. When in reality, I think it's our own expectation that we're putting on ourselves. But I think instead of looking at it in that way, looking at it more of a celebration, and leaning into this almost opportunity that, I always think of like, I was just built different, whether that's from the expectation or experiences, I should say, that I've gone through. But it's given me now this space, now that I can kind of look back and realize that, like, I now am given the opportunity to have this boldness to take up space and be seen, where I think a lot of the time, or maybe in a previous life, I would maybe shy away from that a little bit. And, I think in the adult world, or where I'm at now, that I think that boldness to take up space takes a lot of strength. And it can be exhausting, especially when you've been battered down and tried to put in this box of expectation, but still having that strength to show up with boldness, and to be unique and admired and free for just who you are. That takes a lot of strength. And I think celebrating that, but also knowing that there is that admiration from so many people, and really letting yourself know that that strength is seen, it is admired, whether people tell you that or not. I think as humans, we aren't great at telling people. I think we think of that admiration a lot. I know I talk with people all the time of like, oh, I admire this, or even like just giving compliments. We think those things a lot. Like we think, oh, that person's super great because of XYZ, but we don't vocalize it. We're not great at vocalizing that. And so I think allowing ourselves that space to recognize in ourselves that that uniqueness is seen and admired, and giving ourselves that freedom to recognize that that strength is seen and identified, and that even if we are exhausted from being so strong and showing up as our most bold self, that that strength is recognized in ourselves, and it gives us that space to honor what it means to be different and be built different, and still show up in that space. And I want to show this in a couple of different ways, because I think it takes a lot to finally get to a space where you accept what that means to be bold as your most authentic self. I think for me, I've always had this definition of what it means to be normal. And if you could see me, quotes, right? What is normal? But I think we all have this like perception or expectation of like what normal is. And for me, I think most people, right? It's someone who I think just kind of like almost fits in. And I don't know how to maybe put what that looks like in practice, but maybe goes with the flow, has, I don't know if a standard look makes sense, but I think you can start to put those pieces together, right? Like they're not too loud. They just kind of fit in this status quo. And that sounds, it's going to sound mean, but when I say it out loud, I'm like, oh, that sounds incredibly boring, and I don't want to be that. But also at the same time, like, I think we are almost conditioned to want that, right? Like, we don't want to disrupt things too much as kids. We don't want to be the person that's constantly being too loud, talking too much. This is not going to be a news shock to anyone. I was that person. I talked to everyone. But I think because you grow up in that space, you feel ridiculed for being abnormal, right? And so I think now I've finally, I think maybe my post-college years or college years, like I love that I can just lean into being abnormal. And what I mean by that is the definition of the quote, why blend in when you were born to stand out? That's me to a T. Like, I am that person that will skip on the sidewalk, or recently, and we were talking about like, is it this intrinsic memory where you know how to gallop? And so this whole night when we were, out for drinks and going from to different places, I would gallop from place to place just to prove in my memory that I knew how to gallop. And I did not care what anyone thought of me at all. My 30th birthday, we dressed up as old ladies, like to the nines, and not like cute old ladies, like makeup, lipstick smeared on our teeth, curlers in our hair, like to the nines. It was obnoxious, and we had the time of our lives. It's those types of things that, like, my laugh is so loud. I always say anytime that I go into a place that's like relatively chill, I'm gonna throw off the vibe. Like I'm just not chill. That's not who I'm made to be. But I'm okay with that, right? Like I bring a different level of energy into spaces. And I think I now love that, right? But like so for so long growing up, like being that other or being that person that maybe was a little bit bold, stood out a little bit, like there was almost shame behind that. And it has taken so much of like almost seeing other people who don't feel comfortable with what makes them them. I want to pull it out of them. I want to just shake them and be like, it is so freeing just to be who you are. And when they, when they look at me who really doesn't care, like I will do all of the things, whatever makes me happy, I will do it. And to see almost that admiration in their eyes, I'm like, I just want to shake them and be like, you can do it too. And I just, someone said this the other day to me and they were like, just be no one's piece, right? Like it is not your job to make other people happy in your presence. Be you. And if they accept you, great. If they don't, that's their problem. It's not yours. And so I think this piece of just like challenging what that looks like to you, challenging that notion of everything you've been made to believe, and give yourself space for that authenticity. That's what strength looks like. That's what we're talking about. And it gives you that breath of like, if you're exhausted from feeling like you have to be strong all the time, when you can be strong as your authentic self, it feels so validating and it makes it all worth it in the end. And I think the impact of all of this is just the reality that it can wear on you. This boldness can wear on you to push in spaces that don't honor that strength, that don't honor that uniqueness. And it takes that strength to show up. It takes that strength. And I want to acknowledge that it is not easy. We are not built in a world that honors your uniqueness, that honors what it means to be built different. And the reality is that it takes a lot of strength to be the one that stands out, to resist a culture that is unkind, because it will be unkind. It can be unkind to you. It can be unkind to the people around you. And when you're passionate about changing that culture, it takes a lot of strength to resist it. It takes strength to stand up in spaces that need advocating for change. Not everyone is built to be able to do that. So acknowledging that it will take strength to do that. It takes strength to give your heart to people who are hard to show that love doesn't have a limit. That the people that are hardest to love, we will continue to show up, and that takes strength, and it can be exhausting. It also takes strength to choose you unapologetically, to know what makes you unique and to not compromise that for anything or anyone. That takes strength. Strength is the persistence and the boldness in a world that honors being soft and fitting in over what it means to what they've labeled being too much. We're going to continue to show up. We're going to continue to show up in our uniqueness. and let others see and admire and hopefully allow them that opportunity to lean into that uniqueness as well. So what are we going to do with this? How do we show up in a world where it is exhausting to be that strong, bold person, but to know that that strength is honored and seen? So first, I think it's important that we identify what makes us unique. Being able to acknowledge for yourself, like, what makes you different? What makes you unique? And how do you live that out? I think the second thing is identify somebody that you admire, and what is it about them that you admire? We all have that person. We can all think of that person. But I want us to take that a step further, and of all of the things, when you're identifying why do you admire this person, usually some of those things are also qualities that we have within ourselves. And I think being able to kind of connect those dots and see that we have those same things that we admire in other people, and how do we really acknowledge that strength within ourselves as well. And the third, which is definitely the hardest piece when we're talking about showing up in strength in spaces, is actively practice stepping into some of those uncomfortable or unpredictable spaces and set the bar of what it means for us. Be different, be unique, push yourself a little bit, and just see the power of what can happen in those spaces. And with that, that's going to wrap up our episode this week. I did not mention this at the beginning, but this is from our sticker series, available over on our Etsy shop. So I will have that linked in the description if you want to check those out and have that kind of reminder that you can be bold and be that authentic self, and that strength is seen, and bringing that to the forefront. So check that out. Otherwise, continue to go out, spread that goodness into the universe. And if you need someone that needs that strength seen or acknowledged, feel free to send this episode over to your network. So with that, have a wonderful week.
Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you are feeling ready to conquer the week and let your impact ripple out to the world around you. Let's connect on Instagram and Threads at Dose of Feel Good Podcast. If you're loving the podcast, I'd love it if you'd hit that subscribe button and leave a review. Until next time, share your own dose of feel good and never underestimate the power of positivity.